on this.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I mean, if 9 million Canadians are getting some benefit from the tax change, that means that 20-odd million Canadians are getting no benefit at all. And of course, many of those 9 million Canadians aren't receiving much benefit at all. And I look forward to debating this matter again after question period. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Statements by members. Déclaration de pétition de député.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Madam Speaker, in a few days' time we will be celebrating Quebec's National Day. Of course, there will be a great deal of pride and joie de vivre, but we are made up of a great family basking in the values of freedom, solidarity, secularism, and fairness. The fireworks will blaze brilliantly, reminding us of the colors of our common identity, made richer by the men and women coming from all four corners of the world who make Quebec a prosperous land with its many different flavors. From Val d'Or to Baie-Comeau, we will paint Quebec blue and white, solidifying the bedrock of the only Francophone nation in America. But above all, we will think of the day when our flag will fly proudly alongside the others in the community of nations. Long live Quebec, as varied as we are, and vive Quebec, made up of men and women from around the world. We will have our country. It's only a matter of time.
Madam Speaker, May 31st marked the end of the annual 6-month lobster fishing season in Lobster Fishing Area 34, located primarily in my riding of West Nova. This past season was one of the most successful ones in history, with roughly 55 million pounds of lobster caught off our shores, the best prices in about a decade, and increasing demand from emerging markets in Asia. With LFA 34 being the largest and most lucrative lobster area on the continent, accounting for 40% of Canadian catches and 23% of all North American landings, a great lobster season is the lifeblood of so many rural communities in West Nova. I wish the roughly 5,000 fishers who participated in this year's season a wonderful summer as they prepare for the upcoming season starting in November. And I would invite all Canadians to come visit us in Atlantic Canada this summer because there is nowhere else in the world to enjoy better lobster. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to pay tribute to my good friend Gord McElroy, who passed away recently just short of his 91st birthday. Gord enlisted in the RCAF at age 17 at the height of World War II and was in active service between 43 and 45. Gord and I spent many hours over drinks discussing every topic under the stars, but never his own wartime service. Some guys just don't want to talk about what happened, he would say. Now, Gord was born and raised in Winnipeg, but he made up for it by moving to Edmonton after the war, where he settled with his family and flew with 418 City of Edmonton Squadron. Always a troublemaker, Gord pranged a B-25 once while trying to fly between fence posts that were just 6 feet off the ground, mind you. Gord never stopped. At 65, he earned a bachelor's degree and well into his 80s his MBA. He always signed his emails, and Gord sent thousands and thousands of emails, opinionated ones to the dismay of many recipients, as Gord, the Bulge, the Sage, the Seer, and that he was. Gord, thank you for your service to Canada.
The honourable member for Ottawa West.
Madam Speaker, recently I attended Girls World, an annual celebration of the United Sisters program based out of West Ottawa that was founded in 1994 by the Pinecrest Queensway Community Health Centre. This year's theme, I Am Who I Am, was about identity, a key part of the program's mandate to empower young girls aged 10 to 15. During weekly sessions, girls with their team leaders learn and share about healthy self-esteem, confidence, and teamwork.
I want to thank the organizer, Fadouma Youssef, for having invited me to the Young Girls Celebration in our community, as well as the Minister for the Status of Women, who also joined us and took the opportunity to inspire these young girls, telling them that they are not only the leaders of the future, but also of today. Our job is to ensure that these young girls achieve their full potential.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's a housing crisis in Burnaby. There's a housing crisis in Metro Vancouver, and indeed there's a housing crisis in many communities in British Columbia. And the sad fact is, Madam Speaker, that this government doesn't seem to care about it at all. Housing prices are so high that young people are leaving Greater Vancouver in droves. This according to a recent study by the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. Seniors are worried about their future housing, especially those in rental housing that are on fixed incomes. And of course, Madam Speaker, what's starting to happen is that the housing crisis is so intense that local employers are very worried that they won't be able to retain their current staff. Now, Madam Speaker, I know about these stresses. In the late 1970s, my family lost their home because of high interest rates. And not only did it shatter our family for that period of time, it actually had a ripple effect through our entire lives. And so, Madam Speaker, what I'm very concerned about is that the impact of these high housing prices are going to have on people.
The honourable member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
Madam Speaker, I'm truly humbled and pleased to recognize my friend and teacher, mentor, and one of Canada's sharpest legal minds, Barbara Jackman. In recognition of her important contributions to the law and human rights, Ms. Jackman will receive an honorary doctorate degree from the University of Ottawa this evening. In 1985, in one of the first charter cases to go before the courts, Ms. Jackman successfully argued the Singh decision. In that case, the Supreme Court of Canada found that the rights of fundamental justice, including the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, applies to everyone within our borders, including refugee claimants. For 4 decades, she has advocated either as counsel, intervener, or friend of the court on many seminal decisions. Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau enshrined the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in 1981. Yet it is the likes of Barbara Jackman who have given life to those important rights. I would like to thank Barbara, who is visiting Parliament today, for her sacrifice and work in helping Canada make Canada a fairer, more just, and humane society.
Member for Oshawa.
Madam Speaker, this Sunday kicks off the 42nd annual Fiesta Week celebrations in Oshawa. Oshawa will spend the next 6 days celebrating our amazing cultural diversity with traditional foods, dance, and activities. The vibrant cultural communities that make up Oshawa will proudly share their unique heritage with visitors from across the province. With 18 unique pavilions, Fiesta Week offers the opportunity to experience some of the finest Polish, Ukrainian, Caribbean, African, Greek, Portuguese, German, Romanian, Italian, French, Serbian, Filipino, and Hungarian cuisine in Canada. Over the past 4+ decades, Fiesta Week has proven to be one of the most popular summer events in Oshawa, as it appeals to every age, background, and cultural group. It's living proof that there's room for everyone to have fun in Oshawa. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the hundreds of volunteers who have made Fiesta Week an annual success for more than 40 years, and I encourage everyone to stop by Oshawa and check out our pavilions during the 2016 Fiesta Week celebrations.
The honourable member for Egmont.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to congratulate this year's graduating class at Holland College, Prince Edward Island's community college. Its West Prince campus opened in my riding in 2011 and has quickly become a major asset to the community. In particular, I want to congratulate Marshall McHugh, a graduate of the Electrical Technology program. Marshall was born with Stickler syndrome, a genetic condition that severely limits his hearing and vision. He faced difficulties throughout his time at school. To quote Marshall's own words, "My life experiences have ranged from being overly protected to facing bullying and discrimination. I have known Marshall and his family for all of his life, and I have witnessed the care and patience of his parents, Barry and Gail, and his determination to succeed. He is a testament to the fact that we are not defined by our limitations, and that support and encouragement are equally important as will and perseverance." Congratulations, Marshall, and all 2016 Holland College graduates.
The honourable member for Don Valley North.
Madam Speaker, my Spring Festival motion was passed on June the 1st, 2016. Therefore, beginning in spring 2017, the Government of Canada will proclaim the first day of the lunar year as the beginning of the 15th-day Spring Festival. I thank all my colleagues, including the Minister of Heritage, for their unanimous support. Now we can really make a difference, something solid. I would invite each of my colleagues to do something special in his or her own writing to celebrate Spring Festival 2017. If you organize or participate in the Spring Festival celebration, I can assure you that it will be well received by all Canadians, including Asian Canadians. Next year marks Canada's 150th anniversary. Let's make it a great year for everyone. Let's spring into action. Thanks.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Madam Speaker, countless Canadians learned the great game of hockey on a homemade backyard rink. In my riding, one small rink has produced a future Hall of Famer. Jumbo Joe Thornton of the San Jose Sharks is one of the best players in the NHL today, and I am proud to note that he hails from my wonderful community of Lyndhurst. From leading the Elgin Middlesex Chiefs and St. Thomas Junior Stars to many championships, he then earned the OHL and CHL Rookie of the Year with the Sioux Greyhounds. Joe was selected first overall in the 1997 NHL entry draft by the Boston Bruins. In 2006, he won the Art Ross Trophy for leading the league in scoring and was named the Hart Memorial Trophy winner as league MVP. Joe's recent run for the Stanley Cup created a real buzz in my hometown. And although he and his teammates came up a bit short, on behalf of my family of Sharks fans and my entire riding, I would like to congratulate Joe and his family on a fantastic season. I am St. Thomas proud.
The honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is National Public Service Week, with the theme, Proudly Serving Canadians. I have had several meetings with public service unions, including PIPS and PSAC and others, to discuss and better understand their issues. This kind of dialogue is critical to revitalizing our government's relationship with the federal public service. Many of my personal friends who are very highly qualified are public servants. I know they and thousands of other residents of Nepean and Ottawa work very hard in delivering services to Canadians. As Prime Minister has said, public servants help us tackle the real challenges that we face as a country. They serve a vital role in our democracy and are a source of pride and model to other countries and governments. It is truly a privilege to work with our public servants every single day.
You're here.
The honourable member for Oakville, North Burlington.
Madam Speaker, it's Pride Month, and I am proud to represent a community that recently held a number of family-friendly events to celebrate. The week included a Trans Pride event held in my riding and culminated with the youth-organized Halton Pride Picnic in Burlington. Thanks to people like Beckham Ronigan, Youth Coordinator for Positive Space Network, which organizes the annual event, along with its Youth Action Committee members, Sonali Patel, Taylor Carusi, MC Cowell, and my friend Tyler Weisner. This year's event again offered a safe place for Halton youth to celebrate who they are. Community groups set up displays and music filled the air as young in heart joined in the celebration. With young people like these inspiring not only their LGBTQ2 peers, but the entire Halton community, I am hopeful that they will help Oakville and Burlington continue to build a safe and inclusive community where love is stronger than hate.
Well done, Pam.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Madam Speaker, a few weeks ago I was proud to announce the Free the Beer campaign, calling on our Liberal government to elevate the Como decision to the Supreme Court for constitutional clarification. Now, this is a very important issue for the many Okanagan wineries, craft breweries, and artisan distillers in my riding. Fortunately, I was unable to get enough votes in this chamber to fast-track this initiative. If we can remove more interprovincial trade barriers, it will also benefit other producers and growers, such as the agricultural sector. Interprovincial trade barriers cost our Canadian economy billions per year in lost economic activity, and this means lost jobs and lost opportunities. On behalf of the citizens in Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola, I will continue to make the case to the government to elevate the Como decision to the Supreme Court and support our local economies. Stay tuned, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation. Madam Speaker, I rise today to speak about the month for raising awareness of the causes and effects of brain injuries across Canada. In our country, generally speaking, can lead to serious reductions in consciousness for those who suffer them. These changes generally lead to physical, cognitive, and emotional degeneration. And the cause of such ailments can be as mundane as a sporting or biking incident. Imagine the consequences on such an incident on the life and family and mental health of an individual. It's very simple. Everyone is affected. There is no cure at this time. Prevention is necessary as being the most viable solution as we speak. I invite you, therefore, to join the Minister of Sports and Persons with Disabilities and myself in order to work together under the banner of awareness, and in this way guide the important stakeholders in taking the right decisions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for designated Mississippi Churchill River.
Belated happy birthday to a Dene elder from English River First Nation in Pachinak, Saskatchewan. Mrs. Sarzin Obishan Red turned 104 years old. She was born on June 12, 1912. Mrs. Obishan Rad is a vibrant, active woman. She is healthy and she still lives an independent life. She speaks Dene, Cree, and French. She sings in Latin. She teaches syllabics in school. She is a terrific teacher. The RCMP adopted her as their grandmother, and together they show the true meaning of community police. She plays a very important role in welcoming young RCMP members to the community. Mrs. Obishan Rat sends us a very simple but noteworthy message. Live in harmony with one another. I wish her good health and long life. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
Madam Speaker, the Liberals are bent on piling more costs on hardworking Canadians at the very worst time. Their plan for a job-killing, cash-grabbing carbon tax is just another example. Yet another tax that will only hurt families, business owners, the middle class, people on fixed incomes, the working poor, rural and energy-based communities, and charities. The new NDP carbon tax in Alberta will cost charities like the Calgary Food Bank tens of thousands of dollars in added costs when their nonprofit budgets are already stretched thin. And we know that there can be no guarantee that a national carbon tax would be so-called revenue neutral. What taxes are ever revenue neutral? Or dedicated to initiatives for innovation and environmental stewardship. The Liberals cannot fool Canadians. We know that a carbon tax at any level of government is simply a revenue generator to feed reckless spending and out-of-control deficits masquerading as environmental policy. Canadians can't afford another tax, Madam Speaker.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Saint-Boniface, Saint-Vital. Madam Speaker.
That we are on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. Next Tuesday is National Aboriginal Day, and for 20 years, June 21st has provided an annual opportunity to celebrate the heritage, the diverse cultures, and the outstanding achievements of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people of Canada. Au cours de la semaine.
Over the next week, there are many activities that will be taking place across the country, leading up to June 21st, National Aboriginal Day.
It's not just about reflecting on our past, but renewing the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people on the basis of respect and genuine partnership. Vous avez tous...
You have all received an invitation to the Dawn Ceremony, which will be held from 4:30 to 5:30 a.m. at the Canadian Museum of History. A reception will follow from noon until 2 p.m. in the Sir Johnny MacDonald Building, room 200.
To attend. Merci, miigwech.
Thank you.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Carleton.
History has proven that the perpetrators of genocide are never satisfied with targeting local populations alone. So it is with ISIL, whose followers have slaughtered civilians in Paris, Orlando, in Canada, and almost 50 other places around the globe. It is not simply a problem for over there. The Liberals have recognized in changing their mind that ISIL is committing genocide. Will they change their minds again and reverse the Prime Minister's naive decision to end the air combat mission against this genocidal death cult?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Madam Speaker, this House was right to decide that in order to be sure that atrocities are a genocide, we need to follow the most highest standard possible. And it's why we act after we have seen a report of the United Nations. But this is not the main point. The main point is that Canada is on the ground. We triple our effort to train the Peshmerga to be sure that we'll eradicate this terrible terrorist group and will rescue these populations.
Honourable member for Carleton.
But now that the Liberals have changed their minds and declared ISIL atrocities a genocide, they have triggered Article 1 of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which requires member countries like Canada to use force to stop the crime. Training alone will not stop genocide. We need to strike from the air while our allies fight on the ground. Will the Liberal government respect the law, support our allies, and reinstate the air bombing campaign to stop this genocidal death cult?
Minister.
Madam Speaker, my colleague is wrong. The fact that the United Nations have seen a genocide for the Yazidis does not change at all our tremendous commitment to fight this terrorist group and to eradicate it. And it's precisely why we improve the mission of Canada in this region of the world. We have tripled our effort for training, we have doubled our intelligence capacity, and we are improving our programs for development and rescue these populations.
Member for Carleton.
Madam Speaker, the previous government demonstrated that you can simultaneously train our allies on the ground while we fight the enemy from the sky. And that is precisely what we should be doing now to honor our international commitment. But the Liberal government has abandoned our allies in the Middle East in the fight against ISIL. Now our allies in NATO wonder if they will abandon our allies in Eastern Europe. Will the Liberal government stand with our allies to protect Eastern Europe against Russian aggression?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, the premise of the question is wrong. In fact, our allies are very satisfied with the contribution of Canada to fight ISIL. It's an improvement if you compare with the past, since we have tripled our ability to train, we have doubled our ability to have intelligence capacity, and we have improved the support not only for Iran, for Iraq, but also for Jordan and for Lebanon. And we'll be very, very strong at NATO with our allies for the east part of Europe. Canada is back everywhere, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Madam Speaker, in Canada, well, we've always stood up with our allies when they're attacked, be it in the First World War, the Second World War, or the Korean War. Now, our allies in NATO, in Eastern Europe, are facing Russian aggression. They're asking for 1,000 NATO soldiers in the region to ensure the protection of the region. The Liberals, well, is it their position to abandon our allies? Is that the right thing to do? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, my colleague's premise is completely false. We will support our allies in NATO, as we did in Iraq, in Syria, as we've done around the world, and it's true that we will also strengthen our capacity in the peace mission of the United Nations. We will be present everywhere. Canada is back everywhere, including with NATO, and my colleague will be very happy to see our contribution to NATO. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Madam Speaker, well, if we want to defend instead of defending our Eastern European allies, the Liberals are focusing elsewhere. This goes against what Canada is. Can the Prime Minister confirm that Canada will deploy troops to support our allies? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, our government is committed to actively contributing to greater security and peace throughout the world. NATO is Canada's key collective defence alliance, and we take our commitment to our NATO allies very seriously. NATO allies have now agreed to increase the alliance presence in the Baltic states and in Poland to face the changed security environment in Europe. As a committed NATO ally, Canada is actively considering options to effectively contribute to this effort. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Hochelaga.
Canadians are facing a retirement security crisis. The Minister has been briefed on the fact Canada spends significantly less on public pensions than other OECD countries. He has been briefed on the reality that young people today simply aren't able to save enough for retirement. So, when he meets with the provinces, will the Minister make it crystal clear that the federal government believes CPP must be expanded so Canadians can retire in dignity and security?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for a question.
Madam Speaker, every Canadian shares the goal of a secured retirement. That's why our Minister of Finance, in one of his first acts, was to convey with the Provincial Minister of Finance in order to look at CPP enhancement, Madam Speaker. And I'm proud to say that under his leadership, on Monday, the Minister of Finance of the provinces will meet with him in order to ensure a secure and having our retirees in Canada retire in dignity. Madam Speaker, this government is going to pursue that policy because retiring in dignity is one of our priorities.
The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Madam Speaker, vague answers on pensions, well, that's very concerning. Yesterday, the Minister of Finance wanted to be reassuring. The problem is that he ended his response by saying, and I quote, "I hope to have something positive to report to this House in the coming days." Living on hope alone, well, that's not going to give anyone a comfortable retirement. So I'll ask him again, will the Minister commit to concluding the meeting with the provinces with an agreement to improve the CPP, nothing less? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. Madam Speaker, my colleague should be happy. Indeed, the Minister of Finance is working on pensions in Canada. And presupposing the result would be pretentious, Madam Speaker, this government is open to work with our, in cooperation. The Minister of Finance will be meeting with his counterparts Monday in Vancouver. Madam Speaker, we will continue to work very hard to ensure that all retirees in Canada have a good retirement. The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nijet, Témiscouata, Les Basques.
Speak louder than words, so we'll see after that meeting. The fact is, while Canadians struggle to make ends meet in retirement, wealthy corporations continue to profit from generous tax loopholes. Offshore tax agreements signed by the government are allowing companies to stash away money offshore instead of paying what they owe in Canada. Why are they pursuing even more of these agreements when Liberals should know full well that their government is allowing profitable Canadian companies to evade paying their fair share of taxes?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question. Our government believes that all Canadians should pay their fair share of taxes, and the honourable member knows that in the jurisdiction in which they earn their revenue and profits. The last agreement that was signed, Madam Speaker, was signed by the previous government on June 15, 2015. International tax evasion and tax avoidance has been the subject of discussion at the G7 and G20. We're going to continue to work with our partners to have cooperation internationally. And let me remind this House, Madam Speaker, that we invested $444 million to give the tools, the system, and technology to Syria to combat tax evasion.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nijet, Témiscouata, Les Basques. Well, Madam Speaker, for this government, fighting taxes and tax havens is something that they do with two eyes wide shut. The CRA is giving amnesty to fraudsters. The government's doing nothing to fight KPMG, the great master of tax evasion. Cases before the courts are delayed again and again while the government sits on its hands. All that's lacking at the end of the day is an all-inclusive trip to Barbados for the 1%. And yet it was the middle class that the Liberals said they were going to help and not the 1%. Will there be a public inquiry on KPMG? Will the government finally act seriously to fight tax evasion? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Madam Speaker, the government, the Liberal government, is the government that committed in the recent election campaign to fight tax evasion, Madam Speaker. We've put historic money into that, $444 million at the CRA, to give the CRA the tools, the technology, and the teams that it needs to inquire, to prevent and stop tax evasion and tax avoidance. Madam Speaker, I think that the actions taken by the CRA will allow us to do that, and we will continue to work for that, Madam Speaker.
Beth Ardrey.
Mr. Speaker, Liberals claim they're listening to Canadians, but all their actions point to arrogant Liberal political self-interest. Changing the way we vote shouldn't be about a committee of politicians, it shouldn't be about the Prime Minister, and it shouldn't be about the self-interest of political parties. It has to start being about what Canadians want. So will they give each and every Canadian a direct say through a referendum, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, it's a privilege to be here on this traditional Algonquin territory with my colleagues on this fine Friday. I do believe that the member opposite and I agree that we need to listen to Canadians, that we need to hear from them. This is about them. This is their electoral system that we're trying to modernize, and we will do that by leveraging the commitment and the options that the members in this House have to reach out to their constituents and bring their voices into this effort.
Honourable member for Banff Airdrie.
Well, those are fine words, Madam Speaker, but it has to be more about the actions than the words, and we're not seeing it in the actions. Liberals set up a committee that is made up by politicians, of politicians, and for politicians, and that's all we keep hearing from them. And we've actually seen them actually start to charge people entrance into their so-called open town halls. So newsflash to the Liberals, this shouldn't be about their self-interest, this should be about all Canadians and their interests. So will they give Canadians, each and every one of them, a direct say in a referendum? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Reform.
Girl, I thank parties in this House who have brought forward the names of the individuals they'd like to see represented on the all-party committee to reach out to Canadians, to hear from experts and academics, to hear from those who have come before us in this place, and also to reach out to our constituents and make sure their voices are heard. I hope that the party opposite has had the time to put the names of their representatives forward, and I look forward to the committee beginning its work as early as next week.
The honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I'll quote a Liberal to the Liberals. Our democracy belongs to its citizens, and it is the voters of this province that should decide how the representatives should be elected. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, that was the Liberal Minister for Democratic Renewal announcing almost 10 years ago today the Ontario referendum on changing the province's voting system. After conducting a far more credible consultation process than that proposed by the Liberal government, those Liberals still held a referendum. Why won't these Liberals hold a referendum?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Reform.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question, and I note that he's wearing a plaid tie on this very important day, raising awareness about prostate cancer. I would like to assure him that the efforts we're about to undertake to reach out to constituents across this great country will involve listening and involve reflecting their wishes in this process. I'm counting on the member opposite to hear from his constituents, especially, and bring all voices, a range of diverse opinions into this conversation.
The honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a much shorter name than the old one, believe me. Madam Speaker, I'll continue with the same referendum announcement from June 20th, 2006. Quote, the adoption of a new electoral system would represent a foundational change to Ontario's democracy. This is an important decision that would require the support of a solid majority of Ontarians. Madam Speaker, holding a referendum is what we do in Canada before we change how the people get to exercise their franchise. When the Liberal cabinet finally proposes its new voting system in 2017, will the Liberals allow Canadians to make the final say in a referendum? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister.
Speaker, if that is truly what the member opposite believes, where was this push for good process and referenda when his government pushed through the Fair Elections Act?
The honourable member for North Okanagan, Shuswap.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Ontario Liberal government 10 years ago announced a referendum on electoral reform. A quote from the committee at the time stated, legitimacy must apply to the process by which electoral reform is achieved. A key ingredient to that process will be measuring public support through a plebiscite or referendum, end quote. Will the minister agree to hold a referendum on electoral reform to make the process legitimate?
Yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Reform.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. I believe this is the first time he's asked me a question in this House, and I can assure him that in 2016, we will use all the tools and options available to us to ensure that the process is legitimate, that we hear from Canadians, and we will not move forward with any reforms without the broad support of the people of this country.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Island and Rideau Lakes.
Madam Speaker, the Ontario Liberal minister who headed up the Ontario referendum process 10 years ago still supports having a referendum. She recently said that if you're going to totally change the election system, and I quote her, I think it would have to be a referendum. Madam Speaker, will the Liberals hold a referendum on any changes to how Canadians vote, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Reform.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. I can assure him that we are about to undertake a thorough conversation with Canadians, hearing from them what reforms they'd like to see reflected in their electoral system. Should we consider online voting? Should we consider mandatory voting? And these are among the questions that we need to ask Canadians, and I look forward to the work of all 338 members to reach our goal.
The honourable member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. In a little over 9 months, the new health transfer formula, which will cost the provinces $36 billion, will come into effect. In the election campaign, the Liberals said that they were going to renegotiate the transfers, but now they need to act. Even the premiers of Quebec and Saskatchewan have publicly indicated that this is taking time and they want to see transfers increase. When will the Liberals take this situation seriously? The future of our public health care system is at stake.
Honourable Minister, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the honourable member for her question. Madam Speaker, with an aging population and challenging condition facing all governments, our system must adapt so that it delivers better care and better outcomes at a cost that is affordable. In Budget 2016, we increased the Canada Health Transfer to $36.1 billion. We will continue to build upon the success of most recent health ministers meeting in Vancouver and ensure that our common priorities can be addressed while protecting the provinces and territories' ability to deliver the best possible care.
Member for Essex.
Madam Speaker, after hearing from over 20,000 people, it seems Liberals just don't like what they've heard about the TPP. The fact is, Canadians have delivered a message loud and clear. The TPP is a bad deal for Canada. It will kill jobs and damage our economy. Our allies are already talking about getting a better deal. So why aren't the Liberals? Will they now agree to go back to the table and negotiate a better deal for Canada?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, as the honourable member full well knows, there are many people in Canada who are for the TPP. There are many people in Canada who are against the TPP. We have promised Canadians that we would consult them on the substance, Madam Speaker, and we would analyze their arguments and come to a decision that's the best decision for this country moving forward.
The honourable member for Red Deer Lacombe.
So, Madam Speaker, Liberals believe they're entitled to their entitlements. Always. We know that a 3-day trip to New York cost taxpayers over $160,000. So far, we see $35,000 spent on transportation, $5,000 on tips and gratuities, a $2,000 fuel surcharge, and someone even claimed a $17 glass of juice. So, Madam Speaker, how can Liberals continue to defend this type of out-of-control spending?
The Honourable Minister.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, we're talking here about a lunch in New York in a healthy bistro called Jamba Juice. So, when I see that my colleague doesn't have more important questions than that to ask us in this very important question period, I conclude that we're doing an excellent job.
Lévis-Lotbinière.
Honourable member for Lévis-Lotbinière.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam Speaker, we recently learned that for a recent trip to New York, this Liberal government submitted quite an expense claim. $35,000 for rental cars, over $5,000 in tips, and juice at $17. That adds to the other exaggerated spending from the beginning of this Liberal mandate, like the International Trade Minister's personal promotional tour and the excessive renovations to the Minister of Infrastructure's office. When will they finally understand that it's not their money, Madam Speaker? When will they finally act responsibly with Canadians' money? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, please allow me to remind my colleague that I am indeed Minister of International Development and La Francophonie. Here we're talking about a lunch in New York in a healthy restaurant called Jamba Juice. So if my colleague believes this question of $17 so important to use their precious time here in question period, I conclude that we colleagues are doing a great job.
Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Madam Speaker, $304 on floral arrangements to spice up a meeting room. Over $35,000 for cars.
over $2,000 on fuel surcharges, and over $5,443 on tips. This is just the start of wasteful spending on the Liberal vanity trip to New York. Why do the Liberals need to be reminded that this is taxpayers' money? And what size was that jumbo juice?
The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, our delegation did extremely important work in New York, and once again, my colleagues are fixated on a lunch taken in a healthy restaurant, a meal that I ate quickly, that was brought by a colleague in a healthy restaurant.
I want to remind members to please keep it down. The minister, when someone has the floor, it is customary to respect that. Je demanderai.
I would ask, please, the House to be quiet when others speak. We should show them respect.
Member for Moose Jaw Lake Centre, Lanigan.
Madam Speaker, one of the things we hear advertised every summer is McDonald's Dollar Drink Day, where you can get any drink in their menu for just $1. So nonetheless, I was very surprised then to hear that a member of the International Development Minister's staff charged Canadian taxpayers $17.77 for a juice while in New York last March. Now, we all know New York's a very expensive city, but can the minister explain how her staffer managed to spend that much money on juice? Or is this just another example of Liberals entitled to their entitlements?
The Honourable Minister of International Development. Madam Speaker, I would invite my colleague to do a little Google research and look at the menu at Jamba Juice, and he will see that you can buy many things to eat for a quick lunch in New York. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable député de Berthier-Masquinongé.
Madame la Présidente, après Neuville-Mascouche, c'est au tour de...
After Mascouche, it's up to Saint-Hubert to get an airport. Citizens have said no. The elected officials said no. The UPA said no. The National Assembly unanimously said no. The Minister of Transport refuses to intervene, knowing that this is not socially acceptable. The process has been a mess from the start. Can the minister do the right thing, listen to the elected officials and residents of Saint-Hubert who are asking for a ministerial decree and cancellation of a project nobody wants? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, in the case of Saint-Hubert, I certainly encourage the promoter to consult the population in the region. That is what he undertook to do, and I'll see the results of that consultation. Of course, I'm prepared to listen to the residents of Saint-Hubert as well, Saint-Hubert rather, but we have to realize that in some circumstances, regulations have to be imposed, and I want to know the results of the consultations first. The Honourable Member for Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavik, Ibu.
Others supported by community members are gathering here on this hill to remind parliamentarians of a sacred place near here. The Algonquins have asked politicians at all levels to respect our rights regarding important matters that affect our community, and yet the ZB development project continues ahead. This government has committed to a new nation-to-nation relationship. So I ask again, Madam Speaker, when will this government honour its promises and commitments to Indigenous peoples and move forward by supporting Bill 262 to adopt and implement the UN Declaration?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And we do recognize and support the public's right to engage in peaceful protests, and it is our hope that the parties involved, including the Windmill Development Group, local municipalities, the Algonquins of Quebec, the Algonquins of Ontario, can work together to find a constructive and respectful and positive way forward. And as always, we thank the member opposite for his ongoing work in not only the writing and development of the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, but making sure that it's implemented properly.
Member for York South Weston.
The complex in Kenya constitutes the world's largest refugee camp. The government of Kenya recently announced that they will close this camp, thereby breaching its international obligations to protect asylum seekers and refugees. This is not only inhumane, but it puts in danger people who often will make positive contributions to economic growth. The United Nations has stated clearly that the closure of this camp will be devastating and have asked for this decision to be reconsidered. What is Canada's position on Kenya's decision to close the Dadaab refugee camp?
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
I thank my colleague from your Southwestern for his question. Our government is very concerned about the government of Kenya's decision to disband its Department of Refugee Affairs and its intention to close the refugee camp at Dadaab. International refugee law and refugees' rights must be protected. All returns must be voluntary and conducted in accordance with domestic and international laws. Refugees need to be protected.
Honourable member for Lakeland.
Madam Speaker, Alberta's unemployment rate is the highest it's been in 20 years. 24,000 jobs were lost last month alone. Albertans are wondering how they're going to pay their bills. They're not buying $17 juice. Businesses from Fort Mac to Clarkston and everywhere in between are struggling. But the Liberals just continue to talk a big game and have done nothing but incite uncertainty and delay critical job-creating projects. Will the Liberals finally stop interfering and start getting Albertans back to work?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as we've said many times in the House, we feel for the residents and communities that are struggling with the downturn in commodity prices. Our government believes that major energy projects must be reviewed by a process that carries the confidence of Canadians. In January, we announced plans to appoint temporary members to the NEB to carry out community and public engagement in relation to these projects. After 21 months, the National Energy Board will make a recommendation to the government, and we will determine whether the project is in the overall Canadian public interest. Thank you.
Member for Foothills.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's really reassuring that they are concerned about Alberta. But last month, over a 5-day sale, Ritchie Brothers Auctions in Alberta sold more than $240 million in industrial equipment, a new all-time record. Over the past year, more than $500 million in oil sands equipment has been sold. And the vast majority of that, along with the jobs that go with them, have left this country. Investment, equipment, jobs are leaving Alberta. The Liberal government solution, a job-killing carbon tax. Madam Speaker, when will this Liberal government show some leadership, stand beside Canada's energy sector, and protect...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, Canadians know that reducing emissions will make our economy more competitive, not less. Governments in Canada and around the world are using carbon pricing mechanisms to address climate change. Transitioning to a low-carbon economy will stimulate growth, provide access to new markets, and create jobs. But don't just take my word for it, Madam Speaker. CEO Suncor Steve Williams said, "We think climate change is happening. We think a broad-based carbon price is the right answer." Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Portage-Lisgar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, Madam Speaker, Bill C-10 is a complete sellout of the aerospace industry in Manitoba. But the Liberals just seem to be shrugging off the damage that it's doing. They're even ignoring the new Premier of Manitoba and all of those people in Manitoba whose jobs are going to be lost. My question is, will even one member of Parliament from Manitoba, one Liberal member of Parliament, there's 7 of them, stand up and speak on behalf of the aerospace industry and those important jobs in our province?
No.
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Speaker, my colleague couldn't be more wrong. We are focused on growing the economy of this country and creating jobs, and that includes in the aerospace sector. Now, we know that the government of Manitoba and Air Canada came to an agreement to create at least 150 jobs in the aerospace sectors in Manitoba starting in 2017. It's a good start, but we want to go further than that. We want to grow the economy in this country, including speaking with the people of Manitoba and the government of Manitoba to help to build their aerospace industry. That's what we're going to do.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Madam Speaker. For the past 8 months, we know that this government has plans. One, to put Canadians in more debt, to have deficits one after the other, increasing taxes for Canadians with the carbon tax. Do these people have a plan to help entrepreneurs and create jobs? No.
That is the track record 8 months later. This is probably one of the last days in the House. Could the government tell us why it doesn't have a plan to create wealth and jobs and help entrepreneurship in this country? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I thank my honourable colleague for his question, Madam Speaker. I'd invite him to read the budget for 2016 because the plan we presented to Canadians is one for growth, Madam Speaker. We talked about infrastructure, investment, historic levels, $120 million over 10 years for infrastructure. We have a plan for innovation. Even the Parliamentary Budget Officer says that growth will be 1% next year and 100,000 jobs will be created. That's a responsible government that works for Canadians, the Canadian industry, and middle class.
Burnaby South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's a housing crisis in British Columbia, and during the last election, the Liberals promised to build more affordable housing. They promised to remove GST on new capital investments. Now, Madam Speaker, since then, housing prices in Vancouver have grown by 30% in the last year alone, and the rental vacancy rate is under 1%. The housing crisis in BC and across Canada grows increasingly urgent, yet the Liberals broke their promise to provide much-needed help. Cities like Vancouver and Burnaby need action now. So why are the Liberals breaking their promise to remove the GST on new housing investments?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I'd like to thank the member for this very important question, Madam Speaker. We are very aware of the challenge faced by hardworking families who call cities like Vancouver and Toronto home. The very first action of the Finance Minister, Madam Speaker, barely a month after being sworn in, was to take measures to address pockets of risk in markets like Vancouver and Toronto by increasing the minimum down payment of insured mortgages above $500,000. In Budget 2016, Madam Speaker, we increased the amounts that we're going to give to Statistics Canada to study the impact of foreign ownership on...
The honourable member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Last year, it was this Liberal Party that supported an NDP motion confirming Canada's solemn covenant with our veterans. But this Liberal government is betraying our veterans by breaking campaign promises on pensions, dragging injured veterans back into court, and shutting down vital long-term veterans care facilities. The NDP, like Canadians, think veterans deserve our help through the service that they have done to our country. So why is this government continuing to shamefully fight our veterans in court? Why are they depriving veterans of the benefits that they deserve?
Yes. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for his concern for veterans. This government made a significant commitment to veterans, and that commitment will be fulfilled. We have heard loud and clear from veterans that caring for veterans, including their families, whose service has left them ill or injured, should be our first priority. Madam Speaker, we know that rebuilding relationships, rebuilding supports and service takes effort and commitment, and will continue to invest the need.
The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Madam Speaker, Canada's organ donation rate is among the world's worst. Less than 25% have made plans to donate. Given the opportunity to do the right thing, the Liberals instead choose to vote against a national organ donor registry. Can they explain why they voted against saving the lives of thousands of Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the member from Edmonton Manning for his question. The Government of Canada supports organ and tissue donation and transplantation and has an important role to play in protecting the health and safety of all Canadians. We recognize that improvement is needed in organ and tissue donation, and we will continue to collaborate with provinces and territories and key stakeholders to address the changes that are required in the system. Work is underway on national donor registries, already underway, and the Government of Canada, along with provinces and territories, has invested over $64 million since 2008.
I just want to remind members again to please allow whoever has the floor to speak and not to be yelling from across the way. The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Well, you had the opportunity to take a leadership and you did not.
To remind the member that he's to address the questions to the chair and not to individual members.
Liberals have to do better when it comes to supporting organ donation. The Kidney Foundation of Canada and the Canadians National Transplant Research Program are just two of the organizations that express support for a national organ donor registry. Bill C-223 would have created this. Can the Minister of Health tell this House why she thought the registry is unnecessary?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Government of Canada encourages all Canadians to consider organ and tissue donation and applauds the Honourable Member for bringing this issue to the needed attention. We recognize that improvement is needed to organ and tissue donation system in Canada. Collaboration with provinces and territories, as well as the consultations and engagement with key stakeholders are necessary to address the complexity of changes that are required in the system.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton West.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Public Works, both in this House and in committee, stated only 77 employees were affected by the new Phoenix payroll system. We all know this is false. Every one of us in this House have been barraged with calls from government employees unable to get their paychecks. Why did the Minister choose to repeatedly mislead committee and this House about the seriousness of their mismanagement?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madame la Présidente, notre principal...
Madam Speaker, our main concern is to make sure that all employees are paid the amount that they are entitled to and on time. We continue to get reports about problems related to payroll. This is why the Minister asked representatives to set up a temporary payroll center in Gatineau to support the centre in Miramichi. We are listening to the concerns and issues raised by our employees and unions and are determined.
Preston Chesacook.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you know, the Olympics and Paralympics in Rio will start in just a few weeks and will be a very important event this summer. We are all waiting for the opening games, and we're preparing to encourage our athletes, the pride of Canada. Can the Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Sport inform us about the preparation of our athletes for the Rio Games? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to thank my colleague for his question. I can tell you today in this House that our Olympic and Paralympic athletes are prepared to meet the challenge, and our sports partners are concentrating on the final preparations. Canadian Heritage is working in cooperation with Foreign Affairs, the RCMP, and others responsible for the Rio mission to put in place appropriate plans to ensure the game's success. I encourage all Canadians to support our athletes who are a source of inspiration for Canada.
Madam Speaker, millions of Canadians and countless viewers around the world watched and enjoyed the hit TV show Border Security, Canada's Frontline. A show about the fine work our men and women of the Canadian Border Services Agency conduct every day. It also had educational value, reminding our citizens about border policies and rules. But now the show is being shut down because of yet another example of political correctness by the Liberals. Wow. When will the Liberals come to their senses and bring this hit TV show back?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. I must remind my colleague that everything that is in line with the the Broadcasting Act, of course, is under the purview of the CRTC, which is independent from the government. So I would urge him to contact the CRTC in order to express his view. Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to remind the members of the official opposition I know that it's a Friday, and I know that some people are hoping that maybe this might be the last day in the House. However, I think that we still owe the respect. I want to make sure that there's no more heckling and that you keep your voices down in order to allow so that we can hear the answers. The Honourable Member for Cumberland Colchester.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As many know, there's an allied veteran of the Norwegian Navy in Halifax seeking long-term care. We promised Canadians we'd repair the damaged relationship with our veterans. Can the government assure Nova Scotia members of Parliament and this House that every measure is in place for this veteran and all veterans like him? Here.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Not only do I want to thank the member for Cumberland Colchester and all Nova Scotia MPs, I also want to thank all members of this House for their concern and for their advocacy for veterans. I can confirm that Veterans Affairs works with all veterans, including allied veterans, to ensure they get the long-term care they need. Veterans Affairs supports 6,000 veterans in 1,500 facilities right across the country, and we will continue to ensure all veterans get the care they need, regardless of where they live. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
Madame la Présidente, les libéraux...
Madam Speaker, the Liberals say that they are supporting the neutrality of the internet, and the Quebec government has said that provinces will follow their example. If that's true, the federal government should act first. Will the government defend the rights of Canadians or Lotto Quebec's monopoly? The Parliamentary Secretary.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for his question. The Government of Canada supports the principle of an open, neutral internet and will help Canadians consult the content they want in compliance with the law. I once again thank my colleague for having put this question in the language of Molière, the honourable member for Joliette. Madam Speaker, the government is bragging about the millions it's spending to fight tax evasion, and yet not a penny is attacking the core of the problem. Most of the money siphoned off to tax havens benefits the banks and multinationals. We're talking about $55 billion in unpaid taxes over 5 years, and this is completely legal because the regulations were modified behind the scenes. No one was consulted. Why is the government avoiding the subject and doing nothing? Is it because it's a toady of Bay Street or because it benefits some of its members? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, it's not just a matter of oratory. You have to do something in this country. What we've done in this country is invest $444 million in the CRA to do three things, to give them the tools, teams, and technology to counter tax evasion. And that's exactly what we're going to continue doing. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Madam Speaker, Wednesday we found out that Canada was the second largest seller of weapons to the Middle East. 4 financial institutions in Canada have invested $565 million for companies that manufacture bombs, whereas this is prohibited by a UN treaty ratified by Canada. The Minister of Foreign Affairs is always scrupulous about the rules. Will he denounce this situation or continue to act like we're a banana republic? The Honourable Minister. Indeed, Canada is very strong and very determined to make sure that these kinds of bombs are properly regulated under international law, including in Canada, and that is what we're going to do, as always, with great determination. The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Madam Speaker, the National Energy Board has started an examination of Energy East pipeline. It seems that will be done in English only because TransCanada continues to refuse to translate its documents into French. TransCanada wants to impose its pipeline by force on Quebecers, but is arrogant enough to make sure that the review will not be done in French. Today, the board has officially approved the contempt TransCanada has for Quebecers. Will the government call the board to order? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We clearly indicated to TransCanada that it was absolutely fundamental that they translate the documents related to the Energy East pipeline into French under the circumstances. There's 32,000 pages of English documents, that have been translated, and it is a point of honor for us to make sure that this translation is completed.
So that concludes question period. Tabling of documents. I have the honor, pursuant to Section 38 of the Public Servants Disclosure Protection Act, to lay upon the table the report of the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner for the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2016.
This report is deemed to have been permanently referred to the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates.
Tabling of documents.
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, pursuant to paragraph 322 of the Standing Orders, I am honored to table in both official languages the 2014 and 2015 reports on exports of military goods from Canada, the annual report to Parliament on the administration of the Export and Import Permits Acts,
treaty done at New York on April 2, 2013, and an explanatory memorandum is included with this treaty. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36, Bracket 8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's response to 7 petitions.
Introduction of government bills. Mr. Goodell, seconded by Ms.